Companies usually obtain capital by way of equity, where an investor puts money into the company and becomes a part owner of the company, or by way of debt, where the company issues what is called a debenture, which is essentially a fancy type of IOU. In the early 80s, stamp duty was payable on various types of corporate transaction, including mortgages and debentures. Stamp duty is essentially a form of government robbery, where the government contributes nothing to the transaction, but still requires the participants in the transaction to pay money. Handevel Proprietary Limited was developing a shopping centre in Mildura in Victoria to be called Mildura Park. By the standards of rural Victoria, this was to be a very fancy shopping centre, and so they needed to raise upwards of $26 million. They found that investors were reluctant to invest by way of equity because the profits were so heavily taxed. And investors were reluctant to lend money because straight away the government would come along and steal a bunch of it in stamp duty. So they came up with a clever scheme. The details don't matter here, but it basically involved payment up front for the right to purchase future shares. The scheme was set up so that it neatly avoided both corporate tax and stamp duty. Needless to say, the Comptroller of Stamps objected to clever attempts to prevent him from conducting his statutory robbery. He decided that the scheme amounted to a debenture and assessed tax on it. More than $100,000 worth of tax, a very great amount back in the early 1980s. The High Court had to determine whether the scheme was in fact a debenture. The majority judges said any discussion of the nature of a debenture must begin with the statement that English judges of great authority have confessed that the term defies accurate definition. However, it has been generally agreed that two characteristics of a debenture are, first, that it is issued by a company, and second, that it acknowledges or creates a debt. In this case, the judges found that while the arrangement generated a contractual obligation to pay, this was not the same as a debenture. So the Comptroller of Stamps had been in error in assessing the stamp duty. From this case, we learn that debentures are difficult to define, but they involve a company accepting debt.